Oh!
Hey there, fellow film buffs. Today I'll be reviewing the new film The Substance, written and directed by Qualley, which came out a couple weeks ago and is still in theaters. This movie is as merciless in its assault on our senses as it is in the critique of our vain society, examining our ample ills but focusing mostly on addiction, the pressure on women in particular to stay beautiful, and the image and life-altering steps they take when they succumb to that pressure. It's as disturbing, graphic, and nearly impossible to sit through as anything since Requiem for a Dream. The kind of movie that can leave an audience, my audience to be sure, in silent shock as the end credits finally relieve us. It opens with the shot of a youngish Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore, dancing on her new star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, then shows the star degrading over time. On the nose? Sure, but this movie isn't about subtlety, and it's a clever way to catch us up to the present, where Moore is leading an 80s-style Jane Fonda-type aerobic show complete with leg warmers and an abundance of pastels. The vibe of this show was so spot on, in fact, I was thinking how Moore's clear facial surgery didn't match the era. Turns out, the show is contemporary, but dated, and so is Elizabeth. After the opening, she's phased out by showrunner/producer Harvey, I'm sure that name isn't a coincidence, played by Dennis Quaid. At this early juncture, we've already been exposed to the jarring production design and cinematography, from perfectly framed overhead shots that somehow keep us off balance, to nearly all-white interiors with bare furnishings and accents in bold primary colors. We're constantly aware that we're in an exaggerated world, but a world wholly realized by Fargeat. Of course, timing is everything. Elizabeth gets into a car wreck when she's distracted by a billboard of herself being torn down, and the creepy physician's assistant at the hospital sizes her up, tells her she's a perfect candidate, then slips a USB drive into her pocket. This leads her to The Substance, an injection kit she picks up in a back alley that will produce a younger, hotter copy of herself. What could possibly go wrong? Lots, apparently, because there's always a catch. The clone only lasts for 7 days, at which point she has to switch back to her old, crusty self for another 7 days. Rinse and repeat. The clone, in order to function properly, and maybe in lieu of any kind of birth certificate or social security number that would make her a viable human in our society, must take a daily dose of lifeblood from the host body, which is withering away in a closet. This is akin to taking fat from one part of your body to give your butt some Brazilian elevation.
It seems like nobody wants to work these days.
What follows is essentially a long, spiraling nosedive of Elizabeth's career and life, while her clone, as Sue, takes her place in both, breathing new life into the show and becoming an instant sensation. It's everything Elizabeth ever wanted and painfully out of reach for her, because this is no longer her world. In her soulless condo, which is indeed so soulless I first thought it was a high-rise office, she has a wall-sized poster of her younger self in her aging show, constantly reminding her of how beautiful she used to be. After she's cloned, that's replaced by a billboard of Sue, played by Margaret Qualley, looming over her once spectacular cityscape view, aggressively reminding her that her beautiful self is living life 2.0 and she'll never get to be a part of it. And reminding Sue of what she stands to lose every time that 7th day comes up and she comes down from her substance high. Between the subject matter, the amount of time I spent wincing at the screen, the cyclical nature, the focus on addiction, the growing infection at the injection site, this is Requiem for a Dream for a new generation. And Moore is every bit as brave as Ellen Burstyn was in that film, while being 100% more exposed, allowing Fargeat to fixate on every blemish and imperfection of her off-naked 61-year-old body. I've never considered Moore a huge talent, but this is definitely a perspective-altering performance, not that I'm rushing to revisit her older works.
I just was trying to accurately convey the sentiments of everyone here. That's what I intended to do.
But especially when you consider the amount of image altering she seems to have done to herself over the years. This is the target of Fargeat's aim, so to put herself in this movie really speaks about her bravery and her courage to even take this role. Qualley, like I mentioned, plays Sue, one of the fresh new talents over the last few years, and whom I first noticed in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and have enjoyed in some challenging roles since then, namely Ethan Coen's Driveway Dolls and Yorgos Lanthimos' Poor Things and Kinds of Kindness. And she's just as exposed, sans imperfections. Fargeat channels other movies to lead us in the right direction. The carpeting in the endless studio hallway is reminiscent of The Shining. She plays a music cue from Vertigo when Sue is trying to make herself beautiful one last time for the part of her life, hosting the New Year's Eve gala. The dress she's putting on for the gala is almost a carbon copy, a clone if you will, of the show-stealing blue dress Cinderella wore in the 2015 live-action film. And that's an appropriate comparison since the clock will soon strike midnight on Elizabeth/Sue's entire experience. It all comes full circle in the closing shot when she turns into a puddle of blood and guts on her Hollywood star, then is wiped away into oblivion by a street cleaner. Fittingly, the street cleaner's machine is the same shade of bright yellow as the coat Moore wears when she goes out in public, trying to keep a low profile. Fargeat also wrote and directed the surprisingly terrific 2017 thriller Revenge, definitely a must-see, which showed how easily a casual encounter can morph into a horrific sexual assault, but turned into an allegory for women's empowerment as the victim became the hunter. This could be seen as flipping the script on that, with her female leads taking the hit for Fargeat's scathing criticism on the lengths to which people, and women in particular, will go for the sake of maintaining their beauty. But when you factor in the hyper-sliminess of Quaid's character and the public's reaction to the Moore clone, it's clear that Fargeat is more pointed at the forces in the world that push women to think that every line in their skin or strand of gray in their hair makes them less valuable. It should be noted that Quaid, fresh off the Reagan propaganda pick and media tour, which made it easier to loathe him, also seems to have had his fair share of face stretching. But his character's success isn't predicated on his looks as much as on the beauty of the women whose coattails he's riding. The thematic reach was so broad, it could have been a commentary on any number of things: stem cell research, cloning, addiction to drugs, addiction to vanity, addiction to success and adulation. But at the end of the day, the most pointed critique was on plastic surgery itself, how beautiful people start doing it because they're told by the marketing departments of big cosmetics that they're decaying more by the minute. And of course, how once they do it, they can't stop.
Man, I suck your...
Every step Elizabeth/Sue takes to maintain the effects of the substance makes her look worse, each one accelerating her literal disintegration. The way that new aerobics show with Sue is reimagined and infused with energy, we think maybe Elizabeth didn't get smaller, the show did. So those are my thoughts on The Substance. Overall, I give it a 9 out of 10. Like I said, this is one of the harder movies to sit through I can remember for a long time. And the audience was literally in silent shock when the movie ended. I've never heard an audience that quiet. I don't recall if anybody walked out. I think that might have happened earlier. It wouldn't have surprised me, but again, I was so caught up in the movie that I wasn't actually paying attention until after it ended. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to give it a like. If you enjoy my channel's content, please feel free to subscribe. If you have anything to say, drop it in the comments below and I'll try to respond to everybody. Otherwise, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.